called Europe, governed from Brussels and Frankfurt. Chancellor Kohl talks freely of a political union. What can a political union mean other than the creation of a new country? Well, there's the voice of the Euro-sceptical Conservative Party. By way of balance, let's hear now from the Europhile Conservative Party. I'm joined from Nottingham by Edwina Currie. That we just heard from John Redwood, is that the sort of paranoid nonsense Ken Clarke had in mind, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And I must say, I think we'd have done a lot better if we had had a poster that showed Tony Blair as the puppet of the trade unions. Then I think we could have made a much more effective point. Chancellor Kohl is a friend of this country, and indeed we need all the friends we can get.
Well, on that point, the poster point, Edwina, as a pro-European Tory, you must be dismayed that the xenophobes in your party now seem to be running your election campaign.
Well, I must say, it did feel slightly odd in the middle of the week when I found that the only person who supported in the party my view on Europe was the Prime Minister. And I guess both of us felt, just a little isolated. But that has been the policy of our party for over 30 years. Right. It's done us very well.
So you think it is vital to Britain's future interests that we maintain the wait-and-see policy on the single currency?
Absolutely.
And so you couldn't, in all consciousness, recommend anybody to vote for candidates who want to close off that option by saying they would never vote for a single currency?
In South Derbyshire, I recommend that people vote for me.
What about in Wokingham? Would you recommend people to vote for John Redwood, who says never, ever will he vote for a single currency? In other words, in your terms, he would destroy Britain's vital economic interests.
I would say to candidates like that, never say never. There are a number
But
of
they have said never. Could you say to voters, vote for John Redwood?
I would say in South Derbyshire that you should vote for the candidate that has the interests of the constituency at heart and who's fought very hard to bring jobs that depend on Europe to the constituency, and that's me. All
right, if you didn't live in South Derbyshire, you lived in Wokingham, would you vote for John Redwood?
I don't answer hypothetical questions. I don't need to.
But do you think somebody like John Redwood and the 200-odd other Tory candidates who've closed off the option on a single currency, option you says is vital, do they deserve the support of the British people?
I do find it rather alarming that John Redwood and I gather some of his friends, including Paul Sykes, have been paying our candidates to put wording into the election addresses which is totally at odds with what the government line is, the cabinet line and the line in the white paper.
Right, it's that alarming. You say, your words, you said he was paying them to put that in their manifestos. They might disagree with that. You said that. You also said it's vital that we keep that option open.
Absolutely.
So people really, taking your logic, should not vote for those candidates, should they?
In my view, we should support the Prime Minister.
But what about supporting John Redwood and the 200 other Tory candidates who don't support the Prime Minister?
Darling, you can put the question to me 400 times.
But you're going to refuse to answer it.
And I will answer it in exactly the same way. In South Derbyshire, people should vote for the candidate who has done the most for the area and who is the most pro-European, and that's me.
Do you think John Major has now really thrown in the towel? After all, he wouldn't insult Chancellor Kohl like that if he really expected to be negotiating with him in Amsterdam in 6 weeks' time, would he?
Well, to do him justice, I think probably that advert was placed, possibly without even his knowledge or agreement.
Oh, no, I'm sure it was shown to him. All those ads are shown to the Prime Minister, aren't they? And if they weren't, what does it say about his campaign?
It is not a good idea ever to insult one's friends. And the leaders of Europe, the other leaders of Europe, particularly of the Christian Democrat and right-wing parties, are very much our leaders. If we can't put together alliances with them to get what we want in Europe, we will never get what we want in Europe or anywhere else.
But be honest with me, Edwina, do you think it's really all over? You've lost this election, haven't you?
Be honest with you, it ain't all over, darling, until the last vote's counted. You all thought that we'd lost it last time in 1992. And to be perfectly honest with you, I thought I'd lost in South Derbyshire in 1992, and I was wrong. Right. So let's wait until the votes are counted, shall we?
We could see from what John Redwood's been up to this weekend, he seems to think the leadership election after the general election has already started, doesn't he?
God help us if he becomes our leader, I tell you.
Could you serve in a Conservative Party led by John Redwood?
Well, what would worry me is that what might go down well in places like Wokingham simply will not wash in much of the Midlands. And to win a government, to serve and be part of the government of this country, you've got to win the centre. You've got to win the Midlands. You have to persuade people who are perhaps not natural Tories that it's in their interest to support you. I can't see John Redwood ever doing that. That's why I didn't vote for him when he stood for the leadership in '95.
Edwina Currie, thank you very much indeed.
Yesterday, businessman Paul Sykes, as Edwina Currie hinted, announced that 217 Tory candidates have taken up his offer of cash in return for ruling out a single currency in their manifestos. Among the Tory rebels are a party vice-chairman, an agriculture minister and, most damagingly, Health Minister John Horam. The Prime Minister must have been dismayed by this lack of loyalty, but a week in politics can at least clear political veteran John Horam of any such charge. No one could have been more loyal to the Prime Minister than John Horam. But that is typical of the man. During his long political career, he has always shown absolute loyalty to his leader, whoever that happened to be at the time. During the 80s, John Horam, as a founder member of the SDP, stood shoulder to shoulder with David Owen. Nobody could have been more loyal until he left and joined the Tories. Before that, as a Labour Transport Minister, he was a big fan of Prime Minister James Callaghan. No one could have been more loyal until he left and joined the SDP. He has at least been consistent over Europe. In 1971, as a fresh-faced young Labour MP, he voted against entry into the common market. Today, as a Conservative, he's still dead set against a single currency. No one could be more loyal to Euroscepticism. So, I think we can safely expect him to manage Ken Clarke's leadership campaign after the general election. In a moment, an American journalist compares Jimmy Goldsmith with their own billionaire anti-politician, Ross Perot. That's after this short break.
Welcome back. With the election campaign gathering pace, Downing Street, Chippenham has been bombarded with party propaganda, leaflets, candidate visits and, of course, party election broadcasts. But has this avalanche of indoctrination aroused the residents' interest or simply buried it? And has the corner shop found anything tasty in the party's policies for small businesses? Find out now in Downing Street.
My name is Phyllis Yeo. I'm 72 years old. I've always been a Tory voter. I do read the leaflets when they come through the door because then I can put them down.
Phyllis!
Hello?
Are you there?
Yes, dear.
It's only me, Brenda.
Hello, love.
Hello, darling.
Oh, what are you flogging?
I'm not vlogging anything. This is a thing they're doing up at the sports centre, right?
Not an election paper.
No, it's not this time. I suppose you've had enough of...
Well, the elections, well, put it this way, if I go, this was something different to read than all the election papers.
Yeah.
Because it's getting now that I'm switching the television off.
I was interested, but I think it's gone on too long and people are getting so bored and sick and tired of it.
Yeah.
That they don't bother to listen to what might be the most important matters at the time. Can I pop round later and see you about it?
Silly,
because,
yeah.
you know, because I've been
we'll have a nice cup
involved.
of tea.
You take care, my love.
Bye-bye, dear.
My name is Phyllis Snaggs. I run a small business over the road from Downing Street. My day usually starts at 4:30 in the morning and it's still going strong by 8 o'clock in the evening.
My name is Tony Naggs. I actually work for the post office as my main job and I actually help my wife in the afternoons with the shop. Looking at what the parties are doing at the moment, it's on as regards to the small business, I can't seem to find an awful lot in the Labour manifesto.
Whenever I've spoken to Tony Blair, what comes through is conviction.
He's not very often mentioned small businesses.
I mean, the big guns are behind them. I don't know why, because if they had introduced a minimum wage, I'm sure some of these places would probably suffer.
A few more might shut down.
But I think long term, I would much prefer my hands to be sort of guided by the Tory line than with the Labour one, personally.
I'd like to see them get their tax burden down.
Well, what do you think of that then, Phyllis?
No different to what I said the first time when you asked about what I thought of the leaders. I still don't think his smile or he grins. In fact, he's beginning to now irritate me. As regards as bringing the bulldog in, no way. I didn't like it when they brought the Red Rose in for themselves.
She said, you don't know what it's like living under a Labour government.
What did you think of the Conservative broadcast then?
A lot of it was rubbish to a certain extent. She said she'd never listened to her mother. And the mother says, well, you never lived under a Labour Party. Well, I think that's what it is. Sometimes perhaps we are living in the past as regards the Labour Party. and we should ought to give them a chance.
Tories had that slogan, Britain's booming.
I always felt it was more of a greed government than a need government. And I think we need a fresh change.
Oh, we need a fresh change. I think the Conservatives have got tired, and they could do with some new faces in the cabinet.
So, how are you going to vote then?
Well, I've always voted, and that is the Tories.
I've run my own business in the past in the strange world of motor racing. Things didn't work out then, so I decided to cut my losses and go.
Have you decided on who you're going to vote for?
I think so.
On May the 1st?
Liberal Democrat, definitely for me.
Reading through the manifesto, Liberal manifesto, actually, they got an awful lot of proposals, and in actual fact, I mean, some of them do sound very good. I mean, but I sometimes wonder if there are a few too many proposals, I thought, on the actual Liberal one.
The one thing I do like about the Liberal Party is the fact that they actually lay out specifically how they're actually going to pay for things, whereas some of the other parties, you know, they can all say, well, we'll do this and we'll do that, but with the Conservatives, I feel they've had so many years now to be able to put a lot of things right, which they're now saying they're going to put right. But, you know, why haven't they done it before?
It does smack a bit of a little bit too late, I think, in some of the things. But, I mean, I don't know if any other party would have been any different.
Well, I've always voted Tory up to now, but I really don't think that they're possibly the best for the country any longer. What do you think about that, Phyllis?
I think that the country can do with a change of government, a new party come in, but I honestly don't feel that Tony Blair is the man for that job. I like his views on education, but I don't like his views on small businesses. This is what my dilemma is.
How will Phyllis resolve her dilemma? By staying with John or switching to Tony? Will Dave's defection from the Tories be a switch in time for the Liberal Democrats? And will Phyllis Yeo still find all of them a complete switch off? Find out in the next episode of Downing Street.
Here's a wonderful tale from Zimbabwe. A bus driver was taking 20 mental patients to Bulawayo Mental Hospital. He stops for a drink by the roadside. His charges wander off. So the frantic driver pulls up at the next bus stop and offers 20 passengers a free ride. Delivering them to the mental hospital, he warned the staff that they tended to get a bit excited. They certainly did. Some were so deranged that they had to be restrained in straitjackets. It took 3 days to uncover the mistake. The real mental patients haven't been seen since. They're not the only people to disappear.
Some of our politicians have gone missing. While John Major and Tony Blair are never off the TV screens, the parties seem to have misplaced some of their more voter-repellent colleagues. Has anyone seen this man? The 52-year-old agriculture minister went missing on the day the campaign began and has not been seen since. His distinguishing features are a hectoring voice and a daft hat. Concern is mounting about the whereabouts of this woman. A fair-haired mother of 3, she has not been seen at a Tory press conference for the last month. Both these individuals are highly dangerous to Tory election chances. Conservative Central Office warned the public that on no account should they be approached. Now, let's turn to Labour's missing politicians file. This former ship's steward has not been seen in London since the launch of the party manifesto. There have been unconfirmed sightings of him wandering around remote parts of the country. Colleagues are said to be utterly unconcerned about his absence. And the search continues for this woman. She is believed to have gone into hiding somewhere in Birmingham after being put on the Labour spin doctor's least wanted list. Now, some good news. Another old Labourite and Europhobe, Michael Meacher, has been found. He suddenly turned up at a Labour press conference, though Gordon Brown was most reluctant to let his colleague face tricky questions from the media.
So, Michael, you are an old anti-European campaigner. Could you bring yourself to vote for a single currency?
John, I know this is a question for Michael, and I'll let him in, but it really...
And given no choice, eventually he did.
I am very happy with the position which is set out in the manifesto, which is, I don't know why you're laughing, which is very clearly, which is that...
maybe you want him to read the manifesto to you.
I hope you've read our manifesto. It seems I'm very glad to hear it. It seems the only sensible way in which to proceed.
So Gordon needn't have worried. Michael Meacher was impeccably behaved. Mind you, just to be on the safe side, they haven't let him out since. Where was the Chancellor? That was the question early in the week. Ken Clarke was so absent that some suggested he was the man in the chicken suit. Before the police started digging up the lawn of number 10, John Major thought he'd better show that Ken was alive and well. But would the Prime Minister ungag the Chancellor?
I'm sure my Chancellor has very strong views. Indeed, I believe he has. And he's quite right to have very strong views. If he didn't have very strong views, he wouldn't be my Chancellor of the Exchequer. So you can ask him. Let nobody say I'm gagging the Chancellor. Take as long as you like, Ken.
For the Liberal Democrats, it's not so much the politicians who go missing as the voters. Paddy Ashdown and former Minister for Silly Walks, John Cleese, tried to locate some supporters by phone.
Hello, Mr. Winnerer.
Speaking.
Hi, this is Paddy Ashdown.
Oh, hello.
And I'm here. And we have a collection of press people here who are also laughing, but also Mr. John Cleese. And we undertook to give you a call so that you could have a chance to speak to him.
Right.
Can I put you on to him?
You certainly can.
Here he is.
Neil?
Hello.
What was it about the broadcast that made you join?
To be quite honest, nothing.
Ask a silly question, you get a silly walk. This has been a mixed week for Sir James Goldsmith. On Monday he addressed the nation from his living room in the first party election broadcast for the Referendum Party. The Tory divisions have kept Europe in the news, and according to Maury, Sir James' party has doubled its percent of the vote. It's now 2%. But yesterday, Jimmy failed in its High Court bid for extra party broadcasts. To console him, we sent the Baltimore Sun's Bill Glauber, who turned his attention on the great leader.
Computer billionaire Ross Perot used his cash to buy his way into 2 presidential elections and lost badly. Sir James Goldsmith is using part of his billion to bankroll his way into the British election. So I went to see if he was going to succeed where Perot had failed, and I learned it's not nice to laugh at a billionaire. Let me get this straight. His mom is French, his dad English. He did his business anywhere and everywhere. He's a member of the European Parliament for France, and in Who's Who, he lists his address as Mexico. Why does this man fear a federal Europe? His blue eyes grab you. It's the 1,000-yard stare. He's intimidating, he's charming, yet it's the first press conference I've been to where I could have used some footnotes. Beware a politician who quotes Hegel and Locke in an age of 10-second sound bites. And when he goes into his Churchill mode, forget about it.
We have a force of people whose commitment is enormous, whose anger is deep, whose motivation is strong.
Sir James is clearly accustomed to getting his way, but what's good in the boardroom, as Ross Perot could have told him, isn't necessarily good in politics. Before this campaign, whoever really questioned this guy? Here, the room is full of reporters trying to keep straight faces as Sir James growls.
Total and utter trash.
Oops, then I laughed when Jimmy, make that Sir James, again like Ross Perot, tried to portray himself as an outsider.
You laugh. Have you read the budget?
I'm laughing about Must be tough to be a billionaire. Sir James, like Perot before him, is going to go bust at the ballot box. The city of Westminster is not his natural home. The city of London is. Sir James has raised the morale of Eurosceptic MPs, but I doubt he would like to be remembered as the Ross Perot of British politics, an outsider who tried to foist a single issue onto an election. There must be better things to spend some £20 million on. Personally, I don't get Europe as an issue. I know it's important for the future of this country and everything, but when you go out onto the street and talk to voters, the issues are simple. Jobs, schools, hospitals. Until somebody can tell me what Europe has to do with all of that, I'm going to keep laughing at billionaires.
In a moment, the people of Portsmouth spell out their concerns on education. That's after this short break. Welcome back. After the Euro rows of last week, you might have forgotten this. But all three parties have described education as their election priority, priority, priority. All of them see the issue as a vote winner, and each has a different selling point. The Tories promise to extend choice for parents. New Labour promises no new selection, while the Liberal Democrats focus on increasing resources. We've been to Portsmouth South, the Tory-held marginal, and the Lib Dems' #2 target seat. We spent a day at the City of Portsmouth Girls' School, an inner-city comprehensive with 1,000 pupils between the ages of 11 and 16. All the major parties have had a hand in running education in Portsmouth. Hampshire Education Authority was Tory-controlled until 1993, when it passed into Lib Dem hands. On April the 1st, education came under the control of the new unitary authority, Labour-run Portsmouth City Council. The three issues of choice, selection and resources are on the minds of teachers, parents and governors in Portsmouth. These girls in first-year science are part of a success story. All classes are under 25, and the league tables show that at GCSE, this is the best-performing school in the city. But success brings its problems. This year, there were almost 300 applicants for 200 places. If parental choice is to work, then this school must expand. But it can't.
Our limit is about 1,000 pupils, and I think if we tried to expand beyond that, we would have all sorts of problems.
So the school has an admissions policy, with preference given to girls who live nearby or want single-sex education. But the Tories would give all schools the power to select some pupils. Academic selection would distort the existing admissions criteria. It could also mean exams or interviews, and with them, successes and failures.
I think it will enable a school to actually get a higher standard of student within the school, and thereby up the marking levels of the school.
I'm opposed to selection in terms of creating an elite education for a few. I'm in support of elite education for all.
Both Labour and the Lib Dems oppose selection, but there's concern here that some members of the Shadow Cabinet have not practiced what they've preached.
I feel let down by them. I can't help it. I don't want to feel that way, but I do feel a little let down.
These are some of the parents for whom the Tory promise of choice has not worked in Portsmouth. Many have been denied their first, second and even third preferences. Reluctantly, some have made their children compete for places outside the state system. One family whose son has an assisted place at a local independent school is still worried.
The concerns now, having achieved that, is Labour's thought that they're going to take away the assisted place scheme. If that's the case, then we'll perhaps end up in a situation where we have to sell our house to fund his education.
You'll sell your house to come here?
Yes, we will.
In the end, it's all down to resources. Portsmouth Girls High constantly rethinks how to improve standards on a limited budget. For now, it has decided not to opt for grant-maintained status outside local authority control. Going GM wouldn't mean extra money, just more say in how to spend it. But if cash is squeezed by the new unitary authority, then the school may reconsider its options.
We obviously will monitor the performance, and if we think they're not doing as well for the school as they could, then grant maintained is an option we have to take.
I'd fight very hard against it, and I campaign hard amongst parents to prevent it happening.
Neither Labour nor the Tories are promising any new money for these girls, just to spend existing money more efficiently. Only the Lib Dems say they are prepared to increase taxes to improve schools. But in the past, tax rises have not proved to be a vote winner.
Well, I applaud them for their honesty, but they don't stand any real chance of having to deliver on that by forming a government.
I think it's a real shame that people don't look at children education as the future of the whole society and the future of the community in general. And people are so short-sighted they won't look beyond their own pockets.
I'm joined by parents, teachers and governors from Portsmouth. They're also voters. They're going to confront Eric Forth for the Tories, Stephen Byers for Labour and Don Foster for the Liberal Democrats. Let's deal with choice first of all. Sally Williamson, have you had a choice?
Certainly not. I looked at Ofsted reports, league tables and everything, made my choices as the Tories have told us we had this. I haven't got my first choice, second choice, fifth choice. My daughter hasn't got a place for September.
How does that make you feel?
I'm devastated.
Arthur Poyner.
Well, can you imagine? We've been told that we get choice. They go banging away, away, away. When are the Tories going to say, there is no choice? Will they please shut up about giving us choice?
Anne Cox.
Well, there's 2,000 pupils chasing after 1,800 acceptable places in Portsmouth. Tell me, where's the choice?
Where is the choice, Eric Forth, in those situations?
Well, let's bear in mind what we moved away from was the old system where you only could go to the nearest school. And we said that we thought that was ridiculous and unfair, and we introduced the word preference actually in the statute, which says that parents can express a preference, and happily, something like 85 to 90% of parents get their first preference. And what we tend to hear from, of course, are those who are disappointed, and I can understand that they are. We tend not often to hear those who are happy with the fact that they've got their first preference.
You've been living, Don Foster, you've been running education in Hampshire now for several years. It's your mess. You created this problem here.
I don't think that's entirely fair, because one of the things I think everybody would accept, certainly I suspect people from Portsmouth would accept, that because of the central government cuts in funding to local education authorities, what we've not been able to do, as we would like to, is to get from a situation where I think you described it as 800 acceptable places out of 2,000, so that we can in fact improve the other schools, so that we are providing high-quality places in all of the schools.
Do you accept these, comments?
Well, it was 1,800 places,
So
but I mean, I still haven't had any sort of answer about choice. You use the word preference and think that makes sense, but it doesn't. There's no choice.
Dictionary, choice, preference. I mean, what, you know, you can't differentiate between the two there.
It's just not a fact in Portsmouth.
Are you satisfied with the answer, Arthur?
I'm not at all satisfied. I just wish people would stop talking about choice.
But the reality
it doesn't exist.
Vincent, I think, I mean, no political
We'll come
party...
to you, Stephen, in just 1 second, because here's a question specially for you.
Thank you so much.
Mark Wiltshire.
The state's failed us. My son's got a place at an assisted place, which you're going to phase out. I'm very, very concerned about how his education's going to go, in fact, and my 7-year-old daughter as well.
So you couldn't get into a state school. No. You had to go for an assisted place. You were lucky enough to get one. And you have another child coming along. What are you going to do for him? You're going to phase these out, leave his son high and dry, Stephen?
No, as far as his son is concerned, who I understand is already receiving support through the assisted place, he will be unaffected. We have a commitment to phase it out, but leave those youngsters who are presently getting an assisted place alone. What we've decided, though, is that the 37,000 youngsters who get the support of an assisted place, that money should be phased out, because 500,000 youngsters should benefit, 5-, 6- and 7-year-olds, by being in a class of no more than 30.
But Stephen,
and with the money we get from the assisted places, we'll be able to do that.
But you're phasing out assisted places not to help these people, but to help nursery places. You're not going to benefit secondary education by phasing out secondary assisted places. Well, you're giving it to primary school.
In the long run, it will benefit secondary education, because early years investment means that secondary education can then concentrate on progressing those young people. But the solution to the position in Portsmouth is, first of all, that political parties have to recognise the anger felt by parents who feel deceived over the notion of parental choice.
Mark,
What's
you
got
happy
to
with this answer?
is a planned admissions policy.
Okay. Well, the thing that worries me is that they take away the assisted places. There's not enough places for pupils at the moment. Is that going to get better? Because I can't see that.
Patrick Tierney, how would you define assisted places?
Well, assisted places is using taxpayers' money to buy education for a few children. I want to see taxpayers' money used to buy education for all our children.
Sue Crane, is there another issue about choice you want to raise?
Well, I think one of the things that concerns me about choice is if you can afford to buy a house in a good suburb near a good school, that means choice. If you don't have that opportunity, your choice is often severely limited.
Eric Forth, you see, it's typical, isn't it? Because if the leafy suburb or somewhere else, you can drive, you have a choice, all right. If you have the money, you can drive there and live there, and then you get to the nearest school.
No, that was the old system, funnily enough. Under the old system, which said you could only go to your nearest school, that was where it was much easier to buy choice in the way that's just been described. The irony of the new system, and I think this is benefited...
You think it's not happening now?
It may happen
well,
now,
let's just say, Sally, how many families are involved in the idea of moving house at the moment?
Well, in the area of the city I live in, we have no choice at all because we're too far from any of the schools. And there's people, at least 60 people have been phoning up saying they may have to move.
So 60 people in Portsmouth are talking about moving. Some choice.
Well, as I was saying when I was rather rudely interrupted a moment ago, that
they must be given a say too, Eric. Well, rude or not, carry on.
I thought I was brought here to be given a say. Yeah. The irony about the present system is that, of course, there may still be an element in school admission policy of proximity and geography, but we give people that additional opportunity if they're able to match the school admissions policies of travelling further, and therefore I believe that we give people who are unable to buy their way into the system, as was the case before, a much better opportunity.
There are 4 independent schools. People can buy their way into those in Portsmouth as well. We mustn't forget that point.
Good. I'm pleased.
People can buy their way into anything under the Tories. That's the problem. Yeah. We're interested in people getting into a system fairly, a system that's been invested in for all our children, not just some of them.
You mustn't be rude to him because he takes offence at it. Now, let's go to Judith Kilpatrick. You're head of the Portsmouth School for Girls.
Yes, I am.
Let's talk about selection. Do you have selection at this very good school?
Only in terms of girls. You have to be a girl to get in, yeah.
And do you approve of selection?
No, I don't, apart from that one criteria, of course, in our case. The problem with grammar schools, and that's because parents want single sex as an option. But if you look at grammar schools, what you're doing there is limiting the number of youngsters who can be called bright. I don't think that's fair. I actually believe that standards have risen since grammar schools were abolished. They're certainly rising in Portsmouth. And that kind of movement forward on standards will be diluted if the grammar school option comes back.
Eric?
Well, that's at the very least a challengeable claim that comprehensive has meant an increase in standards. But what we want to do is to get away from that sterile argument about grammar and secondary modern and move forward into the exciting new vista that's now opened up before us.
Carry on.
The Tories they seem to want to go back to a system of grammar schools and secondary moderns. That's exactly
if you
what
have
will
a grammar
happen.
school in every town.
A grammar school in every town.
No, you see, again, if I were allowed to complete the odd sentence, you might actually hear the argument. And that is that we want to move away from that and onto a much more exciting new possibility of a variety and diversity of schools which identifies each youngster's strength and then endeavours to meet that as best it can. So we've got technology schools, language schools and so on.
OK, Mike Philpott, you don't quite agree with the idea of no selection.
I believe that an element of selection within each school is a good thing. I think, as our Tory candidate there said,